Welcome back to this week's episode of Mining the Comments. This week we'll discuss how to leave our mental prisons for good, how to avoid any form of recidivism. This week's question comes from Rico. Rico asks, "Hi Christian, I'm going through a speed bump and have a rough time after a pretty good stretch of sleeping well. Not as anxious as before." That's awesome. "But the mind is absolutely restless and hyperaroused like mad. How did you overcome the feelings of regressing back into the prison? I'm still doing nothing, yet it's tough to keep pushing through." A lot of good things to go over there. So let's break this question down a little bit here. Going through a speed bump after a pretty good stretch of sleep. Well, that's fantastic, right? First of all, you can recognize that you're not broken, right? That you can sleep on your own. You're able to do it. And also, you showed here that you're not as anxious as before. That's fantastic. It sounds like you're doing great so far. It says, "But the mind is absolutely restless and hyper-aroused like mad." Well, the previous sentence says, "not as anxious as before." So it sounds like we're doing a lot better. But at the same time, absolutely restless and hyper-aroused like mad. So what I'm guessing is a lot less anxiety in general, but you're having these moments of pretty intense hyperarousal when these speed bumps come along. That's what I'm guessing, right? Based on your question. We haven't had a back and forth conversation on this, but that's what I'm guessing. How did you overcome the feelings of regressing back into the prison? I'm still doing nothing, yet it's tough to keep pushing through. That's another little bit we can go over where you say, I'm still doing nothing, but it's tough to keep pushing through. So if we're not doing anything, we don't really have to push, right? We're just kind of going through it, right? So pushing means effort, trying, coming up with ways to get through this, right? So let's maybe clarify things a little bit here as well. So how did you overcome the feeling of regressing back into the prison, the mental prison, right? In my recovery video, if you haven't watched it, I discuss how I felt like I was stuck in this mental prison that I just couldn't get out of day and night. And it was probably one of the most difficult times of my life. I just felt I just stuck. And so let's look at oh, wait a second. Let's go back before the prison. Let's look at regressing. So I look at regressing, right? Visually, I think of, let's say, if I'm I don't know, climbing a mountain, right? And I'm about a quarter of the way up the mountain. I trip and fall, and I start rolling backwards, and I end up all the way at the bottom of where I started. That's what I see regressing like, right? We're literally starting from zero. And in this case, as you've talked on your question about you're sleeping better, you're feeling less anxious, right? And so now it sounds like you think when these speed bumps come along that you're regressing. And so I wouldn't say regressing, because truly recovery looks like what you're going through right now, these speed bumps, right? These speed bumps, those are a necessary part of getting through this, even though very miserable and uncomfortable and unpleasant, and we want to be done with them, they're still going to be there. And the more we start accepting that we're okay either way, that we're safe, we can get through them with time. But I understand it can be frustrating. But the question is about this mental prison. So first, what put me into this prison, right? So the couple of things that I would say that put me into this horrible position, this position of total distress and just feeling like a victim and helpless, was number one, not knowing what was happening created tremendous fear, right? So if we don't know what's going on, we feel so helpless, right? When we don't know what's happening, we also don't know how to fix the problem. And when we don't know how to fix the problem, that gets even scarier, right? So if I have a problem with my roof and I have a leaky roof, right? I'll call a roofer to come and fix it. If my yard, I don't know, it's a mess, I can call a landscaper. I have somebody I can reach out for. And so what were the steps that I took to find a solution when I was dealing with insomnia? Number one, I went to my doctor. I went to a specialist, hormone doctors, right? And he did a bunch of blood work and he checked all my levels. And, once we got everything kind of back to, quote, normal, I still wasn't sleeping. So I hired a different doctor, a functional medicine doctor, and again, did more blood work, more tests. And the part that was really scary was we couldn't figure out what the root of the problem was. It didn't matter what test I was doing because I couldn't figure out how it started, and doctors didn't know how to fix it. They would just generally recommend medications. Also, I had one of the doctors recommend therapy. And so oftentimes we think, well, first let's look at medical stuff, right? What's wrong with us? Maybe something is off. And once we do our blood work and so forth and get those things level, and it's like, well, it's not physical. What about emotional or psychological? And so then we start thinking, well, we have trauma that we have to resolve. The reality is all of us have trauma, right? Being lighthearted on some of those that are dealing with some pretty severe trauma in their life, but we all have difficulties in our life. And so what my second step after taking the medical approach was to find therapists of all kinds and help me deal with my traumas. And so even when I was dealing with these traumas, I wasn't sleeping any better, right? And so once again, we go back to not knowing what is happening creates tremendous fear, right? Part of us, we feel like if we can find what the problem is, even though it could be a scary answer, we know what it is, and now we can start approaching it and tackling it and doing something to fix it, but still couldn't find the problem. And so a lot of fear. And so all that fear, all that trying to problem solve with no solutions is what really started to create and build these walls inside me where I couldn't escape. And the more I tried, I even tried a couple of different sleep programs. And as I failed at those programs, of course, those didn't work for me. They didn't help me. Not only did I feel like I was in a prison, but I felt like those walls were caving in and just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Whew, yeah, that was awful. And so what was the solution? What helped me to not only find some peace, but be able to open this door to this mental prison? Well, the solution was knowledge, understanding, truly understanding what was wrong with me, what was going on, what was happening to me. And so this is where Daniel and the Sleep Coach School has been instrumental in not only helping me sleep, but just freeing me completely from this mental prison. And so knowledge is so key here, right? So once I completely 100% understood that this was a reaction to me perceiving wakefulness as a threat and triggering the subconscious to perceive that there's a real threat, a real danger. And what I needed to do, it sounds simple, but obviously it's a journey. That's why we call it a journey. It's a struggle. Is I needed to retrain the subconscious that, first of all, I was safe. I was okay. This was miserable. This was uncomfortable. But I needed to retrain the subconscious that it was perceiving a fear that wasn't there. It was perceived. It's not a real threat. So number one, once I figured out that knowledge, there was no way to regress. There was no way to tumble back down to the hill and start from zero, because I finally knew I had an answer and understanding what was going on. And so as I started to move forward, I can honestly tell you that I felt like those prison walls disappeared. Not only was the front door open, but the walls were gone. And even though I was struggling during the speed bumps, even though I hated it, I had knowledge, I had understanding that what was happening wasn't something like a punishment or something that I needed to do. Okay, now I'm going through a speed bump. What else do I need to do? I remember having this moment with Daniel that it was wonderful. He had such a great way to answer it, and it's such a simple form, but also very powerful for me. So I remember sending him a message and describing what I was doing, very similar to your question, Rico. And so this is why so many of these questions I feel for you. I have such genuine compassion for you and have such a desire to help you get out of it, because I've been there. I've lived it. I felt it. Like when I read these questions, I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember this moment. I remember this day. I remember this period. And it was miserable. And I felt so helpless. But anyways, so I reached out to Daniel, and my question was something like, listen, I'm doing the befriending wakefulness, right? I'm not getting super emotionally, invested in the night, because now I know I'm safe. Worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to feel a little tired. I'm going to be fatigued, but I'm not emotionally invested like I was. I always go back to my go-to emotion prior to this was always anger, right? Caveman mode, immediately just angry, upset. And so in the middle of the night when I wasn't sleeping, I get frustrated, I get angry. And angry can be such an emotionally and physically draining emotion to go through. And so as I was befriending wakefulness, it was like, this is uncomfortable. Just I can rest. I can relax. It'll be fine. And my days were much better, even though I was tired, even though I wanted this to end. I knew that this was part of the recovery. I knew that I was going in the right direction. So the other thing, right, I started implementing the timeless sleep window. Timeless sleep window took me some time to start doing, but I did it, and it started to help me to learn how to let go. And then NADO, not attached to the outcome. That was another one, right? So as I started doing all these things, I started doing better, but I would still get these speed bumps. And for me, the speed bumps had like a very familiar pattern. It was generally 2 or 3 nights with like little to no sleep. So, if I had a rough night, I'm like, oh my goodness, are we going at this again? Are we at this? Are we doing this again? Right. And so as the speed bumps would come along, I sent this email, or I don't know what it was, text, whatever it was, to Daniel. And I said, look, I'm befriending wakefulness. I'm doing the timeless sleep window. I'm not attached to the outcome. What else do I need to do? What else? And he replied pretty quickly. And he said, oh, I love this. He said, you're doing it. And I thought, awesome. I don't need to do any more. I don't need to push through this. I don't need to bear it. I'm doing it. So it gave me a tremendous amount of peace and confidence because I was doing it. The speed bumps were part of the recovery. And I'm telling you, this was such wonderful and yet such simple insight, because all of us, when we're in the struggle, whenever we have a speed bump, oftentimes go, is there something else I need to do? Right. So let's go back to the question again. How did you overcome the feeling of regressing back into the prison? Right. Knowledge. So important. Right. I'm still doing nothing, yet it's tough to keep pushing through. Well, Rico, guess what? You don't have to keep pushing through. You're doing it. You're doing it. Hang in there. This is going to pass. And just keep these concepts in mind, implement them. I'll add one more thing. Whenever we're in the struggle, whenever we're having a hard time, let's listen. Let's listen to any of these thoughts and feelings that are coming through, because it's information, right? It's information. And the more we can listen to the information, the brain can be heard. And then we can also add a little something on top of it, no matter what the information is, right? I'm scared, I'm this, I'm anxious, I'm worried, I'm afraid. I hear you. And I tend to do this very often because I would do this to myself because it would help me bring peace and comfort. And whenever I'm dealing with my wife or my kids, if they're struggling, I tend to, I don't do this all the time. I have to be honest here. I'm not perfect at anything, but I tend to either hold their hand or just put my hand on them because it provides comfort. And so this is how, at least how I do it, how I provide like self-comfort. And so when you're going through the speed bump and you're hyper aroused, a little bit anxious, whatever, listen to these thoughts. I hear you. I don't want to go through this. I'm hyper aroused. I'm struggling, whatever. And also look around, kind of be aware of your surroundings and go, something, this is uncomfortable. This is unpleasant, but I'm safe. I feel safe. Everything is fine. We're okay. We're safe. And that was so incredibly helpful for me. Even now, if I have any kind of a, issue that comes up, more daytime related, I'm feeling a little bit anxious, a little bit angry, a little bit frustrated, a little bit whatever, I listen to it, I acknowledge it, and then I always go, and we're safe. We're still okay. We're still safe. We're going to get through this. And you will get through this. So, Rico, I hope this has been beneficial and helpful for you. You, my friend, are doing great. You are literally doing it right now. You don't need to do any more. Just give it time. The subconscious takes a little time to kind of reset, but you'll get there. So that is all for this week. Remember, this journey can be a difficult one, so be patient, be kind with yourself, and you will get through this. Until next week, we'll see you. Take care.
Hi there, it's me, Daniel, and I hope you found the video you just saw eye-opening. I hope you found it really valuable, and if you did, please hit that like button, write a comment, because this way YouTube knows to feed it to other people who can then find their way to peaceful sleep. Now, if you would like some more education that is more curated, then we have a free course. Our Ready to Sleep in 5 Days free mini course is available on our website, thesleepcoachschool.com, and it may be just what you've been looking for. I hope so, and thanks for being here.